I'm Brett Hayworth. Welcome to What's a Frequency, our weekly show on Siouxland Public Media. About this time last year, steps were being carried out towards the task of hiring a new superintendent for the Sioux City School District, as Rod Earlywine was going to retire in June 2025, after 3 years in that post. An executive search firm was used to pinpoint top candidates for the fifth largest school district in Iowa. More than 20 people applied for the post, and 7 people were interviewed in a closed session. 2 finalists were picked after that, and there were community meetings on February 6 where people could meet those 2 candidates. Those 2 were Juan Cordova, who was the Assistant Superintendent of Instruction for Hazelwood School District in Missouri, plus Corey Seymour, the Superintendent of Schools for Clear Creek-Amana Community School District in Oxford, Iowa. Right after that, Cordova was picked for the post. In making that announcement, Sioux City School Board President Jan George said Cordova had proven he will work collaboratively to improve the delivery of instruction for the 14,500 students in the district. A contract for Cordova was finalized, with his work for the Sioux City School District set to begin on July 1st. But many people know that Cordova's time as superintendent was short and controversial. In a school board meeting the first week of January, the board members unanimously accepted Cordova's resignation, which is effective in late March. So this What's the Frequency show focuses on Cordova's tenure. You'll hear from numerous school officials plus Cordova. Back in June, I had an interview of a half hour with him about the approaching start of his Sioux City Schools superintendent job. What you'll hear now are some highlights of what Cordova said about his background, his approach to education, and his enthusiasm for getting started in Sioux City. Why were you ready to perhaps leave your position in Missouri, and why specifically did you apply for Sioux City?
I'm in my 33rd year of being in education, and there was a reason I got into education, and that is really to serve students and serve the communities. As an assistant superintendent, which I was 3 different times, it's great. I have a great time and so forth, but I'm a worker, not a deliverer, if you will. And so I've always wanted to serve a district because I truly believe that we can do well by students, by being kind, by being respectful, by including parents and the community into what we do, and being very transparent about what we're trying to do. And school districts are not always like that. And so that's something that I truly believe. Reason I chose this location is serendipitously, I was asked by someone that I know well to see if I knew anyone in the Midwest that'd be interested in applying. And so I said, well, I'd be interested in applying. He goes, really? He's like, yes. Okay, I'll submit your name. The reason I wanted to stay in the Midwest is a great majority of my life was actually spent in the Midwest. As an Army brat, I lived at Fort Riley for a long period of time, twice. I lived in Goodland, Kansas, if you're familiar where that is, because that's where my wife was. And I enjoy, and of course I live now outside of St. Louis. I enjoy the Midwest a great deal. Midwestern hospitality actually exists, and that's something I sort of am drawn to.
Okay. And I think you kind of helped me out with the question I was going to ask as a follow-up was, where was Hazelwood in Missouri? So it's pretty much a suburb of St. Louis?
Within St. Louis County, outside of St. Louis.
Okay. And how big is that school district compared to Sioux City?
When I got there, it was about 17.5.
Okay.
It's probably about 16.5.
Okay. So just slightly bigger than Sioux
Slightly
City.
bigger.
Okay. Thank you. Now you mentioned being in Iowa for various times with consulting and such. Had you been to Sioux City before? And if not, what were like your initial impressions of Sioux City and the district once going back to like your interviewing time?
The most important thing that impressed me, because I drove around schools and looked at schools while I was here, is how people treat each other at different places. I mean, I go to Walmart frequently, very, very kind, very nice. Anywhere I went, it was just nice.
Thank you. And what would you say would be the key things that might be needed in the Sioux City School District, and what you maybe impressions that you had on maybe what, as you were interviewing, now that you've been here again a week or a few days, has any of that changed? What you see as maybe the key things to address?
No, I think the key things I would address, and I am going to address, is just predicated on sort of my own personal philosophy on how to lead. So I believe that we place students first in the school district. Right next to students, we place our staff because they're the ones that take care of students. And overall, we serve a community. And those 3 pieces have to work harmoniously together in order for this to be successful. As I looked at scores, because of course everyone looks at scores.
Test scores.
Test scores,
yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Everyone does that. The test scores were probably considered okay, but I think we can do better. I've always thought we can do better. When I had the opportunity to do a podcast with some of the high school students, and I met them through that media, I just know that we can do better. They were absolutely amazing, because my goal is always in a school district that I want to make sure that every student that graduates from our school district has the skills, tools, and knowledge to do whatever they want to do with their future. And for us not to be the situation that causes the default that they default to something. I don't want to destroy any dreams. And so I want that to happen in that fashion.
Should a superintendent more broadly be ready to propose new things that maybe the board members haven't considered?
Well, I'm the sole employee of the school board, so they are obviously my bosses. But I don't think they hired me for me just to sit back. I think they hired me because of the variety of experiences I have. I'm bright enough and been around long enough to know that you don't make a lot of changes when you get anywhere. You sit and observe. That's just both out of respect and out of research. And so that's what I'll do year one, maybe some tweaks on the corners and edges of things and so forth. There are things that I believe are very, very important to me and are very important to families. And families need to feel that their kids are safe wherever they go and that we're doing our job.
While Superintendent Juan Cordova mentioned some things he pondered for year two, his time serving as the Sioux City School District Superintendent ended up being short. This What's the Frequency show is a long-form review of what happened, with 4 school official guests sharing thoughts. At the January 5th board meeting, Cordova resigned after spending 2 stints on administrative leave over 6 months. Many people in the community have been seeking clarity on how Cordova performed over his half year and why the administrative leaves took place. In September, former Sioux City School Board member Monique Scarlett told me, "We have to have accountability, whether it's pleasant or tough." She added, quote, "It just sends red flags for a new superintendent to be hired in July and to have little to no information," end quote, on such details as why Cordova was on a leave. School board and district officials have noted several times that Iowa law prohibits sharing personnel information to pinpoint reasons for the leave. The school board members in that January special meeting unanimously accepted Cordova's resignation, effective at the end of March, a period over which he will continue to be paid. Cordova worked roughly 50 days, and some of the secrecy surrounding his leave ended with a statement by School Board President Jan George. George said the mutual decision to part followed a licensing issue and professional differences. In October, the school board approved hiring the Dallas Lynch law firm in Cedar Rapids as an outside investigator for a personnel matter that has not been publicly pinpointed. In the final days before the school year started, the board members in a closed meeting on August 22nd approved an unexplained leave of absence for Cordova. After being away from his job for a week, Cordova returned to work on August 28th. That was the same day that the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners issued an administrative license for Cordova. Shortly after that, a September 15th Sioux City School Board meeting was designed to be held in closed fashion as allowed by Iowa law to discuss a personnel matter. However, a motion to go into a closed session failed. Board member Lance Emke said the session was presumably about Superintendent Cordova and there were rumors about him, so those should be addressed in the open. Board President George chided Emke, saying he had violated the rights by Cordova to have a closed meeting, as the superintendent had requested. He was then placed on a second leave by the school board after a lengthy closed session on November 10th. At the January meeting, in which the retirement was accepted, Board President Jan George read this prepared statement. Quote, "The Board of Education has accepted the resignation of Superintendent Dr. Juan Cordova. Effective March 31st, Associate Superintendent Angela Bemis will continue to oversee the day-to-day operations of our school district as acting superintendent. The board's next task will be to confirm an interim superintendent and determine the search process for our new superintendent." As previously announced, Dr. Cordova was placed on administrative leave in November 2025. The board accepted Dr. Cordova's resignation to allow both parties to pursue other opportunities. This mutual decision follows Dr. Cordova's licensing issues and professional differences between Dr. Cordova and the board with regard to the standards for the superintendent. We're fortunate to have a veteran administrative leadership team in place led by Ms. Bemis. Given that this is a confidential personnel matter under Iowa law, we have no further comment, unquote, he said to conclude those comments. Board President George later said the district won't likely partner with the search firm until March after naming that interim superintendent. He did not have time for an interview by the time this show was completed, and another Sioux City School Board member, Trayla Lee, passed on the opportunity to be interviewed. Over the rest of this What's the Frequency show, you will hear from Sioux City School District Acting Superintendent Angela Bemis, plus Sioux City School District current and former members Lance Emke, Cindy Hansen, and Dan Greenwell. Thank you for meeting with me today, Cindy Hansen. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
You work in higher education. How often have you been participating in selecting a new president or a key person like that?
Sure. I have been through that process 3 different times of president, and then an additional 3 times for high-level, senior-level leadership in an organization.
Okay. Typically are headhunter type firms used, executive recruitment type firms used, or is that not always the case?
Very often it is. On some occasions there's not, but there does still tend to be a national search. The national search is easier facilitated by an external firm that specializes in that.
Okay. And would you say, Cindy, that there is a typical, skill set or attributes that a person should have if they want to head up a school district or a college?
That's a very interesting question, and in my perspective, it's shifting. I think we're at a transition point. In the past, traditional pathways have been from a classroom educator into a senior administrative position, into a senior leadership position, to that top position. What I've seen on the higher ed side is that has transitioned a little bit, where boards are looking a little bit more for people who maybe have had alternative pathways that include some type of business experience or advocacy experience, those sorts of things. On the K-12 side, just the way licensure works in the state of Iowa, we do need to look for someone who has that classroom experience and then has moved up in that way. That's the only way that you can become licensed as an administrator in the state of Iowa.
Okay, thank you. And the voice you're hearing is Cindy Hansen. She was elected in November to be the newest Sioux City School Board member, and we're talking about the tenure of Juan Cordova as superintendent at the Sioux City School District. And how much did you pay attention basically at this time a year ago, the candidate selection system was going on through the district. They did have a personnel firm that was going through candidates, and then there was 7 candidates who came in and were had sessions or second sessions, and then there was a few that had public sessions as well for the 2 finalists. Did you attend any of those, or how closely did you watch all that process?
Right. I did watch the process fairly closely. I did not attend. I just had some scheduling conflicts with those, so I wasn't able to attend any of them directly, but I did see the scope of community engagement that was part of that process.
Did you have any impressions on when Cordova was first cited as being hired, and then eventually they signed the contract for him, and it was all finalized so that he could begin in July? Any impressions you had of him?
No, not really. I mean, just glad to see that someone was named for the next step. I didn't have a lot of depth of experience or knowledge about him. I will also say that I kind of try to balance how much you can learn about someone through an interview process versus what you're going to see in their performance once they get into the job. I think that's true of any type of position. So I didn't know a lot about his background. What I did know was that he had positive experience and positive outcomes at his prior places of employment.
And there was a lot of school board meetings that delved into his tenure. Starting in August, he was placed on an administration leave. It turns out he didn't have a license for Iowa, so that took him out for about a week. And once he got that license, then he came back. And then there was other public meetings, usually sometimes in closed session, sometimes in open session by the school board. And some school board members said at that time, including Lance Emke, that there was just a lot of rumors going around. How often I'm not necessarily asking you to say specifically what the rumors were that you may have heard, but how much did, like in your friend circle, you were getting ready to run for the school board at that time, how much of that was top of mind, was that sort of conversation in the community?
I think it was fairly top of mind, especially for people who are tuned into the school district and what's happening. And I think part of that was what you talked about. Some things could be talked about in open session, some things couldn't be. And so anytime there's a gap of information, people fill that with other rumors or speculation about what might be. And so I do think there were a lot of rumors floating around. I don't know, even now, I don't think much of that was based upon fact, but primarily on speculation. Unfortunately, this, at the same time or near the same timeline, we saw a challenge or a problem with the superintendent in the Des Moines School District, which fueled even more speculation that may or may not have been related to the situation at all.
And again, then this was all playing out as you were running for the school board. And I know I was at the forum, Cindy, and I apologize that I don't remember if that was a topic, but was that discussed at the forum that you recall, tenure
Any
of Cordova?
Any of the candidate forums?
Yeah.
It was not specifically discussed, at least not a question addressed to me. I don't recall it being addressed to anyone else either, but it could have been.
Okay.
I just don't recall that it was.
I have one more question about, I guess, kind of the mood of the district. But before I get to that, is there anything specifically you want to say about his departure that you can say as a school board member? I don't know if there's certain things you can say or can't say, but any last thoughts before I go into this last question?
You know, the thing that I can say, it is a mutual decision by Dr. Cordova and the board, and just there were some differences. And so, you know, coming to that and moving ahead is really what everybody is most interested in at this point.
Okay. Is there anything that you can share us that you would want as far as a timeline to get someone and how soon all that could get started?
Right. Certainly, I'm interested in starting the conversation as soon as possible and keeping in mind that that conversation needs to be a public conversation. There's nothing in Iowa open meetings law that would allow us to or support us having a timeline conversation as a closed session. And so that's the main thing for me, is to make sure that we're having that conversation as soon as possible to explore what a timeline might look like, to explore what our options are for search, not just in terms of timeline, but search firms that we might use, other avenues that we might pursue, both for interim and long-term hiring of a superintendent. So I'm hopeful that it's not on the agenda for today, but I'm hopeful that we will get to that conversation yet this month.
Okay, thank you. And then one final question, I guess, for you. Cindy Hansen, a Sioux City School Board member, is there any healing that needs to happen within the school district for outlook, mentality, how the rank and file workers, the teachers, the bus drivers, everyone else, all the support staff, that with what happened with the short tenure of a superintendent who basically worked 6 months?
Yeah, I do think so. I think anytime there's a transition in leadership, whether that person was there 6 months or 6 years or 16 years, there is a need for some type of transition. There's obviously been a little bit of chaos, or uncertainty is probably the better word, uncertainty rather than chaos. And so, some time to process that, some time to sort of reset is an important piece of that. And that's why I think having a discussion about interim as well as a search for a more permanent position are both topics that we really do need to take up.
Okay. And again, the voice you just heard there, that was Cindy Hansen. She's the Sioux City School Board member. Thank you, Cindy, for being with me on this What's the Frequency show about the tenure of Juan Cordova in the Sioux City School District.
Thank you, Brett.
Next for this What's the Frequency show on the hiring and departure of Sioux City School District Superintendent Juan Cordova, I'm speaking with the person who was named acting superintendent when Cordova was placed on administrative leave in November. That person is Angela Bemis, so thank you for speaking with me.
Glad to do so.
Thank you. And your title is acting superintendent. The school board members this week said they're going to work on naming an interim superintendent and then work on steps after that to hire a new superintendent. And first of all, for people like me who don't know the difference, how is an acting superintendent different than an interim superintendent?
So it's just really a semantics, but there is a distinction because of Dr. Cordova still having the contract that he is the superintendent. When they're sitting superintendent, whether they're on administrative leave or not, if they still have a contract, if they're contracted with the district, you cannot have an interim contract have an interim superintendent and a superintendent at the same time, because then you have a contract for two people for one position.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and as you say that, that makes sense. But and I'm reminded that he's on contract into March. So until that
March 31st.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And in our succession plan, so as the associate superintendent, just like right with any, with our country, with a company, anything, when I serve as in the role of the superintendent when he is not available. So when, on any given regular day, or if it's just a few days, it's just, I am licensed and I am contracted as the associate superintendent, but to serve in a superintendency capacity. So I then am the acting superintendent until we're able to have an interim named, that which would be after March 31st.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And then you were the assistant superintendent, I believe, when Cordova was hired. You've been that for some time. So when he went on leave and you were asked to be the acting superintendent, did you see yourself as the most logical person to fill that role?
Yes, absolutely. We as a district, we just, regardless of who is the superintendent or the acting superintendent, everything just has to keep going. And so to bring somebody in the middle, right in the middle of the year with no contextual understanding or background of what we're doing and how the district's being led and how we operate, it just makes sense. And I do have, in my daily duties, I oversee and do things that a superintendent would do anyways. So those duties are split when you have a superintendent and associate superintendent. Without the superintendent, they're my responsibility now, but it's not things that I'm not familiar with or I'm licensed, I'm familiar with, and I have experience in doing all of those things.
Okay, and then thank you. For a few examples, Angela and Bemis, just give me what sort of tasks are you doing on behalf of the district as acting superintendent? I know it's basically everything, but just give me a flavor for it.
Well, there is a little, right? So when it comes to all of our representing our district in the capacity with the Department of Ed, participating in any meetings or anything where the information is embargoed or which we have often, where we're working on things or the state's working on things and they are seeking our giving input, participating on different committees at the state level to give input and guide their decision making. Other things are all of the financials of all of our claims, submitting all of our claims. We have a $210 million budget. We have a big budget. So there's a lot. We have quarterly claims that have to be submitted. We have federal dollars. There's a lot of red tape and compliance with our federal funds. There is with our state funds as well, but not as much. So I'm responsible for all of that. Those are I would say that up until Monday, when the board accepted his resignation, I was not acting as the visible leader of the district, just as someone who is keeping things going because we weren't sure what was going to transpire with all of that. But then once we knew that he was going to be gone and he resigned, then the board leadership gave me the designation to act as the visible acting superintendent.
Okay, thank you. And have you enjoyed it? Have you enjoyed being that?
Yeah, really, it doesn't change a lot of what I do. It's more of communicating things with staff, being just like a face at different committees and local community, it's really community relations and visibility with staff are the two things that up until they accepted his resignation, I was really hanging back because we weren't sure what was going to, and we don't want to confuse and we don't want to put out any misguiding or misleading information, just by perception.
Sure.
So, but now that they've accepted his resignation, I've been directed to be a visible acting superintendent, just as if I would have if I was the superintendent.
And when we were talking earlier about interim versus acting, and you, I guess, cited maybe one way that some places could do it is bring someone out from the district. I guess I should have asked this question earlier, Angela. I apologize, but just give people a flavor of what you've done at the district. I know you for sure that you've been a principal. I don't know if you've started teaching and then worked in but just kind of give me your path.
I started as a fourth grade teacher at Irving Elementary on Jennings Street way back, and then they opened a new Irving, and then I was a dual language teacher, a third grade dual language teacher. Then I became an assistant elementary principal. I went from Hunt and Clark as an assistant principal in elementary. Then I went to North Middle as an assistant principal. Then I went to Leeds Elementary as the head principal. Then I went to West Middle as the head principal. Then I became the director of curriculum instruction, assessment, and professional development. And then after that, I became the associate superintendent. And this is my fourth year in the associate superintendent position.
Okay, thank you for that. And again, Angela Bemis speaking with me here on this What's a Frequency show about the tenure of Juan Cordova, started in July and just ended here in early January. Has it been tough to continue quality teaching in the circumstances, or do you think that the employees are getting through fine in spite of that?
So, I can only speak for my perception, right? We did do a climate survey in October with the staff that we had planned on doing anyways. That was in late October and went through the first part of November. And our results were pretty positive, especially looking at the district leadership level. It didn't seem to really alter the results of the climate survey from last year to this year. But what I would say is that we were able to keep consistency because I've been here, and so has our district leadership team. We have a district leadership team of 11 directors, and they are of the highest caliber and quality. And it's been just, everybody has just taken on a little bit more to keep things going. So at the building level and at the teacher level and student level, they're not noticing. I will say that that's something that I feel like we have done well. At the same time, it's not something you can sustain. So the timing, it lasted longer than we would have wished, but I don't think we could have sustained it from impacting directly much longer. But we did, I believe that it hasn't made a huge impact at the building, directly on teachers and kids. Maybe our administrators feel it a little just because all of their leaders have been, having extra responsibilities and an extra load. But in the overall picture, everything has been running smoothly. We've actually had one of our best starts to our school year as far as just looking at things that are going well outside of the superintendent issue. And because there wasn't an established cadence or something with Dr. Cordova, it's not like it was missed because it really wasn't there anyways.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm paraphrasing what you're saying here, but Rod earlier on had been superintendent for 3 years, so there hadn't been like a whole bunch of new initiatives that came from Cordova, so it was still ramping up from past how things were handled previously. Am I in the vicinity there?
Yeah, and exactly. And Rod really believed in shared leadership, so he really, as far as like the work of the district, he believed in, his job is to he really took on this servant leadership. Like, I'm here to support you. You tell me what you need, and we will do this together. So with that was great learning for me on being a superintendent, and it was great learning for our team that we are not reliant on one person to be able to run the district. And that really is where we wanted to get, that if in a crazy situation, kind of like what has occurred, something were to happen, if one person is missing, can we keep going? Because that's, to us, our goal to be a high-functioning organization. And I believe that we were able to do that.
Okay, thank you. And then this is the final question. Mm-hmm. I appreciate your time, Angela Bemis. And I'm pretty much posing this question to most of the people on the show, so it's kind of a mood question or whatever, but is there any, healing in the 20 schools, the employees, the teachers, the bus drivers, anybody, like the whole school climate? Is there any sort of healing that comes from a short tenure superintendent?
Well, I think what they need is security. I think healing, I don't think maybe there's wounds per se, but there is a feeling of instability. That's how I would feel if I were, I can say that when you don't know, right? Everybody, an organization of our size, the biggest employer in Sioux City, we need a leader, right? We need somebody that is the leader. And without that for any sustained amount of time, it can feel, right, your security level or just your that solid foundation can feel a little loose. So I would say that, yeah, there is. And then just because there's so many aspects of the situation that by law cannot be shared, there's then that a little bit of a distrust, I think, just automatically happens because always in public education, it's tax dollars, it's public. So then people do believe, and I understand why, that they have the right to know, but there are laws, right, and that protect individuals and organizations. And when it comes to personnel matters, we just simply can't share certain things. And that causes frustration, not just with the community, but with our staff too. So I think that there is going to be some trust building back up there. And just so everybody feels back to feeling as though they're on solid ground.
Okay, thank you. Again, the voice you've been hearing here for this What's the Frequency show is Angela Bemis. She's the acting superintendent for the Sioux City School District. I had quite a few questions there, and you really were direct on all of them, and I really appreciate all of that. Thank you, Angela.
All right, no problem. Thank you, Brett.
And next on this What's the Frequency show on the tenure of Sioux City School District Superintendent Juan Cordova, I'm talking with school board member Lance Emke. And thank you for joining me today, Lance.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Brett. You have a great show, and we appreciate all that public media is doing in Sioux City.
Thank you. I want to take you back to the hiring process. There was when the final candidates were pinpointed, there were interview sessions. What do you recall about Juan Cordova in his final interview, and what promise did you see?
I saw, of course, we had a resume, and we'd been through more than one opportunity to have conversations with a number of candidates. Was quite impressed with the group we had, including, I want to say it was a group of almost 14. It was already hard to pick and choose among them. I think that one of the things that I am aware of is that we have a school district with 39% of our student body are Spanish-speaking students, and 36 are what you call Anglo-English speaking. We got another 9-10% that are African-American. They are also speaking English and so forth. So while English is certainly the dominant language, and that's the language of our country that everybody needs, we have an opportunity for the English speakers to learn Spanish, because everywhere I go in the country, I see how helpful that is. When I looked at the qualities and the potential that Juan Cordova could bring, I was impressed that he was biliterate, not just bilingual, but biliterate in Spanish and in English, and that I also believed that he would be a figure who had great potential to deliver an effective message to our Spanish-speaking community, which is quite substantial, about how they're heard and their education needs important to us all. With the school district has always sent that signal that we're trying to do all we can to make sure everybody has a great education. But I thought that Dr. Cordova, because of his background and experiences, would relate well and would be believed by those who would prefer not to believe what would be true. So I thought that was a particularly strong component of his candidacy. He was also very well spoken. His experiences were excellent experiences from a variety of places stretching from Wichita to Florida and the like. And so I felt like he had a background of experiences that could benefit our school district, and that he would be very personable and he'd be liked by the community.
Okay, thank you. And then, of course, the ultimate story was that he was hired, his contract signed, and then he started on July 1st, and then the tenure turned out to be short, in hindsight, about 6 months. So when you think over the 6 months that he served as superintendent, is there a takeaway or two that you have about his tenure?
I would call it was a tenure that had great potential that sadly was not realized. And, the reasons and wherefore, for a segment of that time, when he first came in July, I was in Virginia and North Carolina for a stretch of his first time here, and then I ended up having a wonderful opportunity for a trip to Spain and Portugal. So there was a substantial chunk of that time after he first arrived that I wasn't available for him to meet and talk, but we did have some good conversations toward the latter part of, the early part of September. But by then, the issue of the having a license hand was already boiling, and that made that a little difficult. But whenever I talked to him about how could our school district enhance and improve our academic performance for all students, whether they're the folks that need the most assistance and help, to those that are high ability and are best benefited by very challenging work. All of that costs money, and there's a balancing between all of those things. And those conversations that I had with him were, in my view, very positive. But the sad part is I don't think we got to the point where we could engage that potential to turn it into success here before we got to the point that other events and other factors were making it impossible for him to have the kind of credibility he would need to be as effective as I think he could be.
And the voice you're hearing is Lance Samke. He's a Sioux City School Board member, as we're talking on this What's the Frequency show on the tenure of Juan Cordova as the Sioux City School District Superintendent. It began in July, and he resigned earlier this month in January, and he's technically still with the district through March. There was the September board meeting where your school board members were about to go into closed session, and you balked and spoke up about that you didn't think closed session was the right way to go. Why was that the right approach?
A lot of that was certainly misinterpreted and has been characterized by other people as different than it really was. And a lot of the issue of who did what to win and whether this and that was right or wrong to do was also mischaracterized and at a minimum misunderstood. At the time that we were having that meeting, there was precious little information shared with me or with several of the board members about why it was that we needed to have a closed session. And I thought, again, that the credibility of Dr. Cordova would be enhanced because he is a public figure if whatever the situation was could be talked about openly and not in the form of an attack or anything like that, but talked about openly. It was my belief at the time, and I'm not trying to put words in anybody else's mouth about what Dr. Cordova either did or didn't want, is that while he asked for a closed session, which is an essential element before the board can even consider having a closed session, that he would not have objected to an open conversation about whatever was going on, and if there were questions about the licensure that he could explain, or other issues that were then bubbling around in the rumor mill that could be addressed. As it turned out, part of it is we've had several court rulings that have been beneficial to the media world, and I think those rules need to be followed, but it's turned into, oh my goodness, if somebody asks, they're automatically entitled to have a closed session. the Iowa Court of Appeals absolutely ruled the opposite, that the board cannot, just because somebody asks, or when I say somebody, just because someone who may be the subject of a closed session asks to have it closed, that is not automatically the next thing to do. The board is supposed to decide whether the request is something that is in the best interest of the community and the like. And at the time, I thought that a potentially positive conversation about our superintendent would have been the best approach, and that the public would have appreciated knowing about the things that mattered. Now, whether some of the details, I don't know who was it. It's hard to say who wanted things to be secret and who didn't, but at that time I did not think there was a need for any secrecy.
Okay, thank you. And were you frustrated by some of the speculation? And you had cited community rumors. Was that frustrating? How do you view that in hindsight?
Well, I view it as community rumors are community rumors. That's always going to be a challenge for anyone who's in leadership. Certainly, always a challenge for someone who's in an elected position. I was not frustrated by any of the what's the question or the fact that we have rumors. It just we have rumors. What I was disappointed in is how the rumor mill was used to advance some information that I think would have been better to have for the entire community to hear straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, in an open public session, which is what public meetings are supposed to accomplish. Now, does that mean I'm horribly frustrated? At the time, I was making decisions based on the information that I was provided, which was very, very little in regard to the background of what may be boiling up. I didn't believe any of the rumors myself, and I thought that an open discussion would dispel quite a bit of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Clear the air, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then one last question, Lance Emke. I appreciate you joining me here today. When it comes to hiring the next superintendent, how do you think things should go in terms of a timeline and maybe sort of attributes that that candidate should have to be a good superintendent?
Well, let me address two things you said. One is a timeline, and then the other would be attributes for a good superintendent. We on the board haven't really had occasions to even meet and talk about the go forward, but there has been announcements from, I know our board chair, among others, that we'll carry on and things will be good. We don't want to rush into to the extent that anybody thinks, and they would be thinking incorrectly, that there was a rush into a bad choice and that we somehow were hoodwinked. I don't think we were going with that kind of a speed, and we certainly had a number of excellent candidates. I remember when we were at the stage where we had 14, I would have picked any one of them. They were that good, Brett.
Okay.
And so it isn't like there aren't good candidates out there. But I think what we do have a veteran staff that from associate superintendent on down, and we have a fabulous faculty, and they're doing a wonderful job for this school year. So I don't think we're in a foot race to try to have to pick a new superintendent before the school year is out. I'm not saying if the process goes forward in a way that we do have one before the school's out, I'm delighted and happy, but I'm not feeling anxious. A good step-by-step process is a fine way to proceed, and we're not going to be disabled because we do have a truly outstanding, people call it cabinet staff. I don't know that that's an official function, right. but our staff at the downtown office and our faculty out in the school buildings are all doing an excellent job. And we then have an opportunity to look at vision and where would we want the school district to go. And I think we need to have a good conversation I would like to see that be a good public conversation so that we can know the attributes that we're looking for. I'm not trying to overemphasize the fact that we have a 39% of our student body is Spanish speaking, and so it's what we have is a student body that's best able to each learn the other language. And and I'm not saying this should be something all of our students do, those students who want to and are able to, who could come out and have a multi-language ability, will do financially better in the business world, and they will have great success here in Sioux City and elsewhere. And so I think that's one feature of our school that could be a special advantage over other schools if we decided to develop that. But is it an absolute essential? No. Am I living and dying on whether we have super emphasis on dual language learning? There are other things we should do as well. What we need to do is make sure that all of our students, from those who need extra help to those who are high ability, are all challenged to reach their best ability. And I would want a new superintendent candidate to be committed to that. One that could say, well, this program or that program is laudable, but either can or can't be done just now. We do know that we're at a time where just a week or two ago, the U.S. Secretary of Education and the Governor of Iowa were in Denison talking about grant money from the federal government in a block grant for language programs. And again, I'm not just the language program director. Mm-hmm. I'm the director who says academic performance, that where we need to invest the most is where we think we can get the best, I hate to use bang for the buck, but our best success on everyone meeting the highest point that they are able to, and not just cruise through school. I think school is a work. It's not just fun. Hopefully there are a lot of students who look at it that way, and we want to challenge all of them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And again, the voice you heard there was Lance Emke. Thank you for joining me here on this What's a Frequency episode. I appreciate your time.
Very good. Thanks, Brett. Good luck with your program.
Next for this What's the Frequency show on the hiring and departure of Sioux City School District Superintendent Juan Cordova, I'm speaking with a former Sioux City School Board member, that's Dan Greenwell, who exited that position a few weeks ago. Thank you for joining me today, Dan.
Oh, glad to be with you.
Thank you. When you look back at the short tenure of Juan Cordova, was hiring him a mistake?
Yeah, I mean, Brett, I've said it before, the hiring of Juan Cordova was a huge mistake. And I was part of that process, and yes, I originally voted to hire him. So, I was involved in it from the beginning. I think the one thing that I've learned really with 40 years of successful business experience is, when you make a bad decision, you make a mistake, you try to correct it as soon as possible, and then move forward. Time never fixes fundamental errors. It just doesn't. The thing that really got me worried, and I wasn't going to run for the school board this time, but what was happening is we had serious employee concerns that were expressed and communicated to board leadership back in August, before Cordova went on his the unpaid leave. Those concerns really weren't shared with the full board, so we didn't have full knowledge. Subsequently, there were many other employee concerns that were brought forward. There were concerted efforts that were made to attempt to suppress the valid and verified employee concerns. I mean, examples of that are no votes to go into closed meetings to discuss it, votes to not authorize an independent investigation, and then votes not to review the results. I mean, that to me is really unbelievable. That our number one job is to protect students and staff, and voting no after you hear concerns on things is just not very realistic. I think, my view is that the resignation should have taken place back in September. It would have saved the district over $150,000 if we'd got it done back in September. Unfortunately, Lance Inke's unhinged, I call it a theatrical performance, in a meeting on mid-September, I think September 15th it was, of which Cordova was aware in advance. It was politically motivated, and it put the district in an untenable, or a terrible position. It's just something you just can't let that happen. My view is it was amateur hour on full public display at its best. Therefore, as a result of that, there was an enhanced payout to Cordova, which really resulted, the taxpayers are left holding the bag, and it was just a shame. But hopefully the board will recognize that our current cabinet is highly upgraded, very professional, and really supremely experienced. That cabinet has really been running this district and improving student achievement. That's the key thing, is improving student achievement really for the past 3 years. They've been doing a wonderful job. It shows in the numbers of student achievement. We're doing very well compared to our peers around the state. It's my view that Sioux City doesn't need another outside pretender, otherwise known as, quote, a visionary from a big city, to further bamboozle the board and fleece our community. I think our folks here are very, very good, and we need to look internally. Is my view.
Thank you. And the voice you're hearing there is former Sioux City School Board member Dan Greenwell. He was on the board for several years. As with all superintendents who are hired, Superintendent Cordova had a contract, and the resignation that was accepted has him still technically as superintendent and being paid through late March. And you said he got an enhanced payout. Like, what makes you say he got an enhanced payout?
Well, let's go back and talk about some of the facts. On day one, July 1 of when he was employed, it was his first day of the contract. He did not have a superintendent certificate. Didn't have a license. It's legally required by the state of Iowa. He did not have it. We didn't find out about that until sometime around August 21st. He should not have been on past September 30th. And unfortunately, I said the statements made by Mr. Inke and some others gave him extreme leverage on the district, and it prolonged this resignation and prolonged the payout. We're paying him through March now, which is really 6 months additional pay, and he's a $300,000 guy, and with his other retirement stipend, and so 6 months is $150,000. It's just unconscionable that the district was put in that position, and it basically forced a payout that we didn't have to make at all. I mean, clearly we could have taken care of this in September. You're in breach of contract, all this kind of stuff, and that should have. And then these significant concerns that came out through the Title IX report. I said at the beginning, I made a mistake hiring him. Yes, I was part of the process, but when you make mistakes, you try to fix them as quickly as possible. And I think that was one of the fundamental errors that occurred. We didn't fix it when we knew there was a significant problem. So that's where it's at.
Thank you. And again, the voice you're hearing is Dan Greenwell. He's a former Sioux City School Board member. I just am now thinking to ask this question. Do you know when he last, so he technically is still the superintendent, and his resignation doesn't take in effect until the end of March, when he last worked in the district? Do you have a sense of that?
I think he was put on administrative leave on November 6th. Is when he was put on administrative leave. He took unpaid leave at the August 21st or August, right around there,
right,
for a week. Then he came back. That was unpaid leave at that point when he didn't have his license, and the board found out. Full board found out about it, and then I think he was put on leave on November 6th, effective November 6th or somewhere around there. So he hasn't been on premise since November 6th.
Okay, thank you, Dan. And then final question, just I guess kind of moving forward, is there any healing that needs to be done by the existing staff members and students? And or based on what you said a few minutes ago, are you recommending that an existing employee be picked as the next superintendent?
Yeah, I'm not on the board anymore, so that's the board's job. But certainly that's something you should seriously consider. Like I said, the current cabinet has been running this district for the last several years anyway, quite frankly, from the day-to-day operations. And you just have to look at the results. How have we done? we have done extremely well when you look at the other schools in the state of Iowa, both on the academic performance, the improvement, significant improvement, and then on the financial side, this group has been managing the financials. So certainly we have qualified people, and certainly they put in new programs and processes that if you look at it objectively and through the lens of data versus emotion, you would say that, wow, they've done a phenomenal job. So would there be an internal push for me if I was still on the board? Absolutely, but that's I'm not on the board anymore, and that's really up to them. But like I said, we don't need a visionary from a big city to come in here. Some board members think that's just fundamentally, they don't know because these big school assistant superintendents don't really know how to operate at a detailed level, and our cabinet members do, and they've done a remarkable job.
Okay. Thank you, Dan Greenwell, for joining me here on What's the Frequency for the show on the tenure and upcoming departure of Sioux City School District Superintendent Juan Cordova. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for your time.
That will be a wrap for this edition of What's the Frequency, a show on the hiring and departure of Sioux City School District Superintendent Juan Cordova. Thanks to my guests, who were Sioux City School District Acting Superintendent Angela Bemis, plus Sioux City School Board current and former board members Lance Emke, Cindy Hansen, and Dan Greenwell. As we move into a third year for the show, thanks for being a part of our station as we work every day to tell the stories about Siouxland that inform, entertain, and expand the mind. Thanks for listening, and please join us again next week. What's the Frequency airs on Fridays at 10 a.m. and again on Sundays at 2 p.m. Make sure you also check out a few of our Siouxland public media music shows that air at 10 p.m. as we have Hip Hop Chronicles on Thursdays, Mixtape Dance Parties on Fridays, and 10 o'clock Blues with Stumpy Steve Smith on Saturdays. For Siouxland Public Media, I'm Brett Hayworth.